About a conversation that I had with my brother. Jim got to experience two Mackenzies at Cal Poly. I graduated in 81 and my little brother Stuart graduated in 90. And anyway, a couple of months ago when I found out that this was going to happen, this dinner, I called him up and told him about it, and he's living in San Francisco right now. And anyway, he called me back and he said, well, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do. He had the opportunity to take a trip to Russia with my parents, and that's where he is right now. I don't know what I'm going to do. There's this dinner for Jim Hayes, and I really want to go to it. So I gave him some sisterly advice. I said, don't be a fool, go to Russia. So, but I think it's you know, kind of a measure of the respect he had, and that we all have. That it was an agonizing decision for him as to what to do, and if I'd been in his shoes, I guess I would have agonized too. So.
The footwork gets a little tough, so bear with me as I try to get the microphone to our
First of all, I'm always comfortable calling Jim Jim. He's always Mr. Hayes to me, among other things. But there's only been two other people that have meant more to me than Mr. Hayes, and that's my father and I forget the other guy. But you're not only talking a lot about writing, you're talking a lot about.
Hey, we gotta have a reunion, and it has been that reunion. And as we all came here and walked in, to me there are two things about Jim Hayes, physical things that always stick in my mind. One is the red marker, and how I dreaded seeing the red marker on all the stories I wrote for him. And the other were the glasses, and how the man could look over the rim of his glasses without moving his head and look at you and say, "You must be kidding." It was really the red marker and the glasses and the look that what Jim Hayes did for me and so many others. He demanded respect. He needed the best from you. He expected the best from you. He taught you that second best is not good enough. The impact that you've had on my life and so many others here, I hope you can fathom it.
But I'm a graduate of the Jim Hayes School of Divinity and Journalism. Class met from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. That's when Jim and I were the early guys at TNT. And we would pray over the copy. We would wear little yarmulkes and have prayer shawls. And we would try to heal it.
Who knew Jim Hayes when he first got to Cal Poly way back in 1969. I had just completed my term as the editor of the Mustang Daily, and I had told Bob Kennedy that 3 times a week he was wrong about the war. He was wrong about Ronald Reagan. We stole telephone numbers off his desk to find out who the new football coach would be. And that we thought we were always right. So in the fall, Jim comes sauntering into the newsroom. In September 1969, I was in the Horseshoe. I was then, I think, the sports editor. Before I did my senior project in 3 days, I had to be sports editor again. And Jim walked into the Mustang Daily newsroom. It was L Mustang, in case you hadn't even heard about it. We changed it to Mustang Daily in 1967, but that's not a bank. Jim walks in, and I said, "You must be the new guy." And he says, "Who are you?" "Well, I'm George Ramos." "Of course, you've heard of me." And as just has been described, he kind of looked down his nose at his glasses and said, "You've got to check out the new talent." And I wondered if he'd ever make a name for himself during his 16 years at Cal Poly. There was some minor misdeed beyond Bakersfield, I didn't even know. Fast forward 20, 25 years, Jim becomes a writing coach for the LA Times, where I am now employed. I write a weekly column that appears in the Metro section there, and I've had, I guess, some success over the years. I've been involved now in 2 Pulitzer Prizes, one in '84 and one just last year because someone decided they wanted to have a riot in Los Angeles. We get in the room and there's Jim. He talks about this, he talks about that. I call him Mr. Hayes. Well, Mr. Hayes, I said, I was trying to say A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It was then he gave me that same look that I saw all those years ago. He looked down his nose at me and said, "Pull your seat for this." But through the years, I have to say that we've all got our story to tell. Tonight I walked around the tables. You hear the stories. I'm just one of a few that get to share this microphone. But I think the highest compliment you can pay someone like a Jim Hayes is that for each of us that he has sent out, we in turn talk to 3 and 4 and 5 people. We end up telling Jim Hayes' story. And that's how stories are spread and legends are born. I'm still waiting for him to come to East LA, and I'm still waiting for him to take me to Cairo, but one day, Mr. Hayes will happen. Thank you.
I work in New York, and when some people were saying, well, where are you going this weekend? Why are you taking the days off? I said, well, I'm going to California, and I told them why, and they all said, why? And I said, well, I don't know. I'm not sure, but there's this guy out there, and I am one of the few people who went through the journalism department, who graduated from Cal Poly, who never had the privilege of having one of those red lines with an F, and that's only because I never had class with him. I remember when I first got to Cal Poly, people had signed up for this class, and they would come out of it kind of like they were in a war zone, and they'd come out and they'd say, oh, this guy's terrible. He's horrible. You take this class, and he scares you to death the very first day, and if you come back the second day, then he thinks you're ready. You've had a lot of contact with Mr. Hayes, and he's been great. He's been very supportive through the years. He's just been wonderful, and I just say, God help those people at the LA Times.
To use microphones. I only stayed on Mustang Daily. I avoided Ed Kelly and all the rest of it. And I'm not funny either. That's the worst of it. So I can't follow any of these people. But I remember my first day in Jim Hayes' news writing class, which was in the fall of '69. And I remember the very first thing he made us do was go out into the newsroom and write a story on a typewriter. And he was very insistent you couldn't write it out by hand first, which of course is what all of us had always done, and then type it. Nope, you had to start using that typewriter and make it part of your thought process. So it was pretty difficult, but it was the immersion approach that Jim always followed in all of his classes. You've got to go out and do it. Cal Poly, learn by doing. But it was very worthwhile for all of us who went through it, obviously. I guess the thing that gets to me most is that as I sit here and look at everybody, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to be funny because it's not a funny occasion for me, but I guess I can't believe that this man made time for all of us. Clearly, we're here because he touched each of us individually. And I know how much time he spent on me long after I left Cal Poly, and he had the rest of them to contend with. I remember that my first job professionally was at San Luis Obispo, following up in Jim's wake. Every time he'd go on vacation, they'd let me put the Saturday tabloid together for them. And it was supposed to be my first real job after I graduated. I worked for them during the year. But I decided to go to England for a year, and they said that the job would be there when I got back. We won't name names, as if he said that. So I went off to England. And there I was in Sheffield, England, living in a flat with no telephone, thousands of miles from anywhere. And along about spring, when I was coming back in June, expecting to go back to San Luis Obispo, I got a letter from Bob Bodenhauer. Oh, I said no names. Anyway, I got a letter that said, oh, by the way, we hope you weren't counting on a job here because we won't have an opening. And I was devastated, too. And the man went out and just got me a job. last thing I want to mention is that in Sacramento, even though I'm not a working journalist anymore, I tend to forget it. I've only been gone from the Sacramento Bee for about 6 years. So they let me be part of the Sacramento Press Club, and they let me do things like help give that kind of experience that we did. It's sad. They don't have professors that are on the line working every day and bringing that experience into the classroom. And I think we're missing a dimension that Jim Hayes brought to our lives and just made us special people because he's special. So thank you, Jim.
These are miscellaneous shots from the late 70s. Late 70s.
Acres away.
Jim and Jim Kelly, question mark, and Vicki Duncan.
Yeah, who is that guy there?
Question
Who he
mark.
is?
Anyone? Julia Zirvin from the old 80s. Starring as Tom Corbett, Space Cadet.
Dean Russell.
How many people saw Jim at their graduation? I did too. I got that. It's about 1970. Pete King. Really? 779. Tony Bird.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Paul Newman, about half stone.
Joshua. 1984.
Rushed to the scene, and the driver was standing alongside his wrecked car, and he was bloodied, and he said, "Who hit that ball?" Jim said, "I did." He said, "Well, look what happened. You wrecked my car, I'm bloodied, I won't be able to go to work, I'll probably be sued. What are you going to do about it?" Jim thought for a moment and said, "Well, the next time I play that hole, I'm going to choose a 9-iron." I expected it was a very tough act to follow, but I didn't think it was going to be this tough. The tomatoes rot on the vine, B-I-T-Z, meaning they were sway back. But nonetheless, Jim, I decided, with the help of 3 of your admirers, Meredith Freeman, who's here, and Sabrina Allen and Liz McGill, to take a poll of the people in the agriculture department to see how they felt about you. And I have the results just delivered to me tonight. And I sorry to tell you, Jim, it was a close call. But the final results go something like this. You are a peach of a fellow. You are the apple of our eye. And if we could afford to buy you a watch, it would be gold, 24 carats. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Meredith Freeman, one of the sterling products of Jim's genius.
You know, with all this hubbub about his hole-in-one, there's a rumor spreading tonight that he's going to be taking the proceeds from this evening's function and taking a major golf trip to England next month. So, but don't worry, that's not true. I just wanted to tell you that that's not true. He's not taking this trip. to promote their dream of better communication for the agricultural industry. The effort was a reflection of how he wanted to carry out the Brock's dream. And I'm happy to say, and I know he's proud of the fact that he's made the Brock Center what it is today, and he did carry out their dream. On behalf of the Brock Center students, there's a select few of us. We agricultural communication students were the other concentration. There was the broadcast, news ed, PR, and then we were the Aggies on the other side of campus. So we weren't well known, but he took the time to understand our goals in communicating in the ag industry, and we thank you for that. He influenced us, he cared about us, respected our goals, and he encouraged us to succeed in the ag communications field. He was not only our teacher and advisor, but he is also our employer, those of us who worked at the Brock Center on special projects or as student assistants. And he was not only that, but he was also our friend. They're kind of long. Anyway, he made the Brock Center a real fun little stress reliever. He was a workhorse, and he did a lot of working in the, behind his computer, but every once in a while he needed a little stress reliever. So he would walk into the Brock Center, being all wise and omniscient and everything, and he would look over to our one of the student assistants and ask her if he could have permission to go play solitaire on his computer. He had this little solitaire game on there. And the student assistant would ask him, well, I'll give you permission if you've had a productive day. And he said, well, I've had a pretty productive day. And so she said, okay, I'll grant you permission. So he would slowly walk into his office and close the door behind him, sit down at his computer, and play solitaire for the next up teen minutes, maybe hours, trying to beat it. Well, then occasionally he would walk out, and this was rarely actually, and he would come out and actually we'd hear this little yelp from behind the door. And we'd kind of wonder what's going on in his office. And he would, a couple seconds later, he'd come out, he'd open the door and come out and just kind of stand there and put his hands in his pocket and smile and look proud, and I beat the computer at solitaire. But we also we couldn't have done it without you. It was just wonderful. So thank you.
Single thing Jim Hayes told me in school. I don't remember if I got an F on a paper or a C me. Older generation, I guess so, because I can't remember a thing, but I think it all happened. You said it happened, I gotta believe it. I just remember screwing up fishing boats. Before we go any further, I'd like to say thank you to the committee that put this on. I was off in Nebraska. Jim Hayes probably got me that job, and I didn't even want it. But the committee that put this together, it's been a tremendous evening. In particular, I'd like to thank Jeff Fairbanks, who wasn't even a Hayes student. God knows why he got involved in that. Susan Houghton, who just did a tremendous amount of work. Susan and I started, I think he still is. And George, I think we got George involved in it. And ultimately, this is what materialized. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to my good friend Vernon. I don't see you very often.
Thank you, Paul. Jim, over the years, your guidance and wisdom helped many students survive their years at Cal Poly. And your retirement brings an end to that day-to-day contact. And the future students are the losers in that. But throughout your years of teaching and helping students, you instilled high standards and ideals in all of us. So the first thing we did when you retired, we got together a group and decided to deceive you. You're paying for dinner. Could you give Jim the check, please?
Here's your check.
I'll treasure it. The committee met with you and gave you an invitation to this dinner long after it was planned. and so that you couldn't back out. But there was a paragraph missing from the invitation. And we just withheld that from you until tonight. But this summer, we've made a couple of appointments for you on campus up at the financial aid office. That's not for retirement money. The scholarship has been funded for next year, and an endowment has been established, which is 70% funded, which will fund the scholarship in perpetuity. In honoring you with this scholarship is just one small way we can say thank you for all you did for each of us in journalism at Cal Poly.
It really isn't much of a story.
Better give us a lead then.
I wish I could. Old man listens to a lot of saccharine talk and wonders where he went wrong. In your little heart of hearts, you know that I wasn't right. Not all the time, for sure. I used to say that I'd look out into a laboratory when we had 16 students. I never trusted these things. Did you hear me without it?
Yeah. Use the handheld.
Invention of the devil. These things, it's like a dildo. These things.
Jim, you have to turn it on.
That's a vibrator.
At the very bottom.
There's a guy who knows a hell of a lot more about dildos. When I was in Nebraska with Paul, he took me to a truck stop. Probably the biggest collection of pornography I've ever seen. One solid wall of this thing was girly books. How did you know about that?
Hayes investigative technique.
We were curious in those days. We were very curious. I used to look out on a class of 16 in a lab reporting, editing, or whatever the class was. We always had 16 until times got rough, and now it's up to, what, 18 or 20? And in the beginning, it was typewriters, and then it was electric typewriters, and then it was computers, and always the same arrangement of chairs and Dean hovering around in the back trying to keep things running no matter what kind of equipment we had. But I would look out at that room on the first day and say, the chances are that two people in this class are going to wind up amounting to anything in this business, the thing we're talking about. And by this business, I mean the word business, not necessarily print, but print or broadcast, because that's really what we're all about, even public relations. And I would say to myself, and surely not to any of you, that in this room there are two people who are going to amount to a hell of a lot, and the rest of them are going to be wine stewards at someplace in town or be pumping gas. And you know this room is filled with those two people out of every one of those years. Because you're the good ones. I don't know whatever happened to those other folks. Why the hell didn't they come? like to say that I'm touched by this display of extravagant friendship and love. But after you get a certain age, you're no longer touched very often. Belt buckle, of which I am inordinately proud. It's a picture of two whales, or an engraving, a rather heavy brass buckle engraving of two whales on it. It says the right whale. And I only wear it on special occasions, particularly because my belly is beginning to protrude a little bit and the buckle has a tendency to look south. Instead of out like it ought to look. But when I wear that, I feel about 10 feet tall. And one day I was walking across the campus and I had on my high-heeled boots and my whale buckle. And I just felt good. I really did feel about 12
Little
feet
things
tall.
in life.
And I see this young woman coming toward me up the hill from the Kennedy Library, walking up the hill toward me, and I just know that she's going to stop me and say something about that belt buckle. She was obviously admiring it even from that distance. Her eyes were fixed on it. And sure enough, as she approached, I could tell that she wanted to say something to me, and finally she did. She got up very close to me, put her arm on my shoulder, and said right into my ear, "Old man, your pants are unzipped." You know, Ed and I shared that, the late Ed Zucchelli and I shared that office for almost as long as I worked at the TT, I guess, 13